Welcome to Bard's Gaming Corner. I'm Bard. This video will be a review, or rather a look back at the isometric RPG Pathfinder Kingmaker. With its sequel Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous coming out this year, 2021, let's see what kind of game the original Kingmaker was, and is it worth playing? Pathfinder Kingmaker is an isometric RPG developed by Russian software company Owlcat Games. This game, very much inspired by similar classic role-playing games like Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights, takes place in the Pathfinder setting. Pathfinder is a relatively new tabletop RPG that is mostly inspired by the Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition ruleset. The game was launched in September 2018 and was sadly plagued by a lot of bugs from the beginning, so the early reviews were a bit mixed. However, luckily most bugs have been solved by various updates, and nowadays the game is perfectly playable. I myself have been playing Pathfinder Kingmaker since the spring of 2019 and I have hardly come across any annoying bugs. In this retroactive review I'll be looking at the story, gameplay, graphics and sound of Pathfinder Kingmaker. Story. Pathfinder Kingmaker takes place in the Stolen Lands, a region in the world of Golarion, which is the default setting of the Pathfinder tabletop game. At the beginning of the game, the Stolen Lands is a wild, lawless region overrun with bandits and monsters. One bandit in particular is a danger to civilization. The Stag Lord, self-proclaimed ruler of the Stolen Lands. It is the job of your character and your party to defeat this Stag Lord, take over his bandit lair and start building a kingdom here. In other words, become a kingmaker. After gaining your kingdom, or barony as it's called at first, the story is divided in different chapters, and in each chapter you have to deal with a different threat or challenge. However, there is one overall story arc that you have to deal with as well. Apart from the main storylines, there are of course the storylines of your companions that range from I need to get revenge to the world should know the brilliance of my writing, and untold smaller side quests. There are a lot of small side quests in this game. Overall, the story and the writing is pretty decent. Maybe not the most original, but granted, with the slew of RPGs that are available the last 20 years, it's almost impossible to really have a new angle in your story. Especially with a typical party-based isometric RPG like Pathfinder. If originality is what you as a gamer are aiming for, an excellent game like Disco Elysium is maybe more for you. Gameplay. The gameplay in Pathfinder Kingmaker is a mixed bag. In some areas the game really shines and can stand next to excellent games like Divinity Original Sin 2 or the Pillars of Eternity series. In other areas the game, in my humble opinion, is a bit of a letdown. First, let's start with the good. Pathfinder really knows how to give you a tabletop RPG experience. From creating your character, managing your party, dealing with the quirks of your party members, all of which give a good RPG flavor. Combat, of which there is a lot in this game, is easy to master and takes place in real time, just like in Baldur's Gate. If you start in normal difficulty, the game is easy to master. While the game doesn't take you by the hand, most quests are pretty doable for the average RPG fan. Boss fights can be quite interesting, but almost never too daunting. If you lose, it's mostly because you have to adapt your tactics, or you're not experienced enough. Managing your characters and inventory is clear and concise. If you have played RPGs like this before, nothing is out of the ordinary. However, if you're a complete beginner, the many options in the game can be a bit daunting. For instance, there are so many ways on how to develop and level up your character, a beginner won't see the forest for the trees. For players like that, I would advise on starting with a simple character like a plain barbarian, fighter or rogue, and pick the obvious choices when leveling up. That way you get to know and learn the game, and you can still have a great time. Now the bad. There are two things that I didn't like too much about the game. First is traveling. You will do a lot of traveling in this game. which is done on a large map. You will have random encounters with bandits and monsters, and sometimes traveling merchants, which will break up the monotony. But traveling will take a lot of time, especially when you have to travel from one end in the kingdom to another. And during travel, you will have to rest as well. Perfect time for one or two of your companions to get into a long and meaningless discussion. And every time you rest, this will happen. Now, at first, these discussions will give some backstory to your party members, but after the 20th time you just don't care as much. Later on in the game you can build magic towers in different parts of a kingdom, which will give you the ability to teleport from one end to the other and cut travel time in half. But the long travel time is an annoyance quite early in the game. I hope Owlcat will fix this in the coming Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. Another point is the atrocious kingdom management system. After you have defeated the Stag Lord, you can build new towns, expand them by buying different buildings and using your advisors to fix problems. This at first plays somewhat like the system Pillars of Eternity uses. However, this system is very flawed. 2 times already my game just ended, game over, because I couldn't make my kingdom work. Now, my party was optimized and I was enjoying the main storyline, but I couldn't master the strategy part of the game. Now I turn the difficulty for this part as low as possible, and you should as well. I like a good strategy game like Civilization, but there you know when you screw up. Here you don't. Overall, the game plays pretty good, keeping in mind that Owlcat isn't a AAA studio. Like I said, Pathfinder really gives out the vibe of a tabletop RPG, but I hope they fix the traveling and strategy part for the upcoming sequel. Graphics. The graphics are adequate and quite colorful. The graphics are somewhat on the same level as Pillars of Eternity 2 or Divinity Original Sin 2. The character models are a bit cartoony, but this is the overall vibe of the game. All the areas give out the typical European medieval vibe that is used in most RPGs. Lots of leafy forests, rivers and swamps, but all done quite well. Nothing mind-blowing, but they do the job. It's in combat where the graphics really shine. Using spells and such, the game comes alive. The spell effects look very beautiful. Sound. Overall, the sound is of excellent quality. Combat, walking, etc. all has good accompanying sounds. The soundtrack is particularly good, being both dramatic and melancholic. It really stays in your head. The voice acting ranges from excellent to good to a bit mediocre. I'm looking at you, Amiri. But from such a small studio you shouldn't expect every dialogue to be in the same level as The Witcher 3. All the main characters have spoken voice acting, and many of the side characters converse just in text. Conclusion. Should you play this game? If you're a great RPG fan like I am, then yes, buy Pathfinder Kingmaker. If you focus on the role-playing side of this game, this is one of the best and engaging isometric RPGs out there at the moment. It's fun to play, combat is good and you have a lot of interesting party members to choose from. The story, while not the most original, is interesting and fun, and is long as well. You will have a lot of hours and hours to finish the main game. Now, the traveling and city building is not well done in this game, but if you're willing to overlook this, you will have found one of the best current isometric RPGs in Pathfinder Kingmaker. Final score 8 out of 10.